start off by saying that these stories are 100% real. Also, let me say that I don't believe in ghosts per se, but these stories are things that I think about often. They give me the willies every time I think or talk about them. Buckle up, due to the backstory being needed. This is going to be a long one. I grew up in southern Louisiana, and as a kid, I loved going to my grandparents' house to do things such as fish, watch movies with my grandfather, and cook with my grandmother. This house is a beautiful home, still standing, surrounded by stately oaks and broad magnolias. Baton Rouge folks will get that reference. It has a long winding driveway where moss hangs from the 100-year-old oak trees over the gravel drive, and a beautiful pond off to the right side of the drive. It's an absolutely beautiful home on an absolutely gorgeous piece of land. The woman who built this house owned a small shop in the suburb of southern Louisiana. This woman was very beautiful, and from what I had been told, never missed an opportunity to dress up in her high heels. She was married to a man who had been in a car accident, I think, and was severely handicapped. As his condition got worse, she had to sell the house and downsize in order to pay for his medical bills. When my grandparents bought the house from her, she was extremely devastated that she had to let it go. She was legitimately obsessed with this house. It was like a child to her. She was so obsessed with this house, in fact, that there were several times that my grandparents went out to run errands and came back to her there, peeking into the windows of the house to check on it. Fast forward some years after she moved out of the house and my grandparents were settled. She was killed by a notorious Louisiana serial killer that tormented South Louisiana from 1922 to 2003. She was one of the 7+ victims in his terrible killing spree. Fast forward again years after her murder, and I start spending many weekends at this house, loving life, being a normal kid. I had no idea about the previous owner, but always felt uneasy when I was in this house by myself. Hearing random knocks and footsteps was normal, and my grandparents always just attributed it to the house shifting. My grandmother's 2 Siamese cats, Wally and Ernie, were always around and sort of comforted me when I was alone in the house. I always thought that could be attributed to the random noises. When my brother and I would go over to their house as young kids, we would sleep in the bed in the master bedroom with my grandmother and the 2 cats. We would be constantly woken up by weird noises and what sounded like someone walking on the wood floor in the hallway connected to the closet. What's extremely creepy about this is that in the front closet, there were high heel marks permanently marked into the old creaky wood floor where the previous homeowner would get dressed and put on her high heels. One night, I clearly remember a knocking loud enough to wake me up, and one of her cats getting extremely agitated to the point where it stood up on all fours, looking in the direction of the noise with its hair standing up on its neck. The feeling that someone was in the room was extremely startling and spine-chilling. This started to happen more times than not when we went over there. At this point, I started to ask my grandparents questions due to the fact that I was scared shitless every night I went there. They acted like they had no idea what I was talking about. I'm sure that was just to be sure not to scare me. One day, I was in the office computer room at the front of the house by myself while everybody was outside fishing. I was genuinely enjoying myself, drawing a picture of a pelican that I had pulled up on the computer. Sitting next to me was a stack of DVD cases, stacked about 4 to 5 high on the desk. When I looked down to resume my pelican drawing, the stack of cases were forcefully pushed off the desk and landed about 2 or 3 feet away on the floor. I simply couldn't believe my eyes. I got up and ran out as fast as I could. When I told the story to my grandparents, they were very skeptical and just kind of laughed it off. At this point, I was genuinely convinced that something was wrong with this house. One night, not long after that event, while watching a movie with my grandfather, something happened to me that I will never forget. My grandfather had fallen asleep and was laid back in his recliner, delivering his trademark loud snores. Being that the house was away from any light source and that it was miles away from town, it was extremely dark and quiet when the lights were off. I continued to watch the movie by myself and got the intense feeling like someone was watching me. I tried to brush it off, but it was so intense that it felt like someone was standing next to me, just watching me watch the movie. The room started to feel like it was getting smaller and smaller around me. I genuinely felt like I was intruding on someone else's space. Eventually, in the hallway behind us, I heard footsteps as if somebody was walking away in high heels. It was the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. To this day, I have no idea what happened, and it will forever perplex me. Not long after that, my grandparents told us the story of the previous homeowner and her love and obsession with the house. Both of my grandparents are chemists and people of science, so, like me, they didn't believe in ghosts. I don't know what it was in that house, but we eventually stopped going over there because it scared us beyond belief. In the summer of 2016, the house, along with most of the Baton Rouge area, flooded. It got 8 feet of water throughout the whole house and destroyed every wall and even some of the ceiling. At that time, my family's house flooded as well, so I was living with a friend. One day, my grandmother asked if I could go let the builders into her house so that they could continue to work on the house. I agreed, picked up the key from her, and got to the house early just so I could experience that energy one last time before they sold and got rid of it. I walked up to the front door, unlocked it, and walked in. To my pleasant surprise, I didn't feel anything. The house was empty, all of the walls were knocked down, and I could see through the whole building from the kitchen. All of the creaky wood floors with high heel marks were torn out. All of the belongings were gone, and it was barren. It smelled like a powerful mixture of mud and paint. I genuinely think that this flood took whatever energy that was in the house with it when it drained. It's so weird, because I have such an attachment to that house. I want to own it one day, even though it scared the ever-living fuck out of me in my youth. When I was a child, I lived in a very distressing environment. My father, although not violent, was extremely manipulative and verbally abusive to me and my mother. My mom did the best job she possibly could of shielding me from the damage he did to those around him, but it still left me with terrible anxiety and depression from a young age. I remember multiple instances where I hallucinated distressing things, but none of them were truly unexplainable. When I was 4, my doctor prescribed to me a high dose of prescription-strength Benadryl that is not suitable for children. I theorize it is because of this that the first night I took them, I hallucinated a wriggling, slithering carpet of spiders covering the floor. Needless to say, my mom never took me back to that doctor and began taking me to actual specialized pediatricians. Later in my life, at the age of 10, I experienced sleep paralysis. I don't remember much of it, but I remember seeing shadow people staring at me from the darkest parts of my room. Despite these encounters, only one is truly unexplainable to me. No medication, no sleep paralysis, nothing. One night, when I was 6 years old, I couldn't sleep. This was normal for me, but this time I felt as if I was being watched. At some point, an hour or so into the night, I got thirsty. I still felt as if I was being watched, but at the time I did not think that these fears were rational, as my anxiety often mimicked this feeling. I walked into the hallway and immediately felt an immense drop in temperature. This wasn't unusual, though, as my room was far better insulated than the rest of the house. I continued making my way to the kitchen to get a glass of water, but stopped as soon as I saw it. The living room was directly next to the kitchen, and they were separated by one thin wall, so you could see the kitchen and living room from the hallway. In the middle of the living room, standing in the center of the room, was a massive humanoid shadow creature. It was extremely skinny, roughly 9 feet tall. It had to bend over to fit under the ceiling. It had a face that was constantly smiling. In fact, the face was the only part of it that wasn't completely pitch black. It stared at me smiling as I stood there completely unable to fathom what I was looking at. And then it waved. That's when my survival instincts kicked in. I spun around and ran as fast as I could back to my bedroom. I couldn't hear it move, but I could feel it getting closer to me. I slammed my door shut, and I got into my bedroom and immediately slid under my bed. I watched the crack under the door from under my bed, unmoving. I watched as its feet stood at the door before it slid under the door. It was as if it lost all shape and became a two-dimensional puddle of pure darkness. This formless puddle approached my bed before the creature went back to what it was before and stood in front of my bed. It reached its hands under the bed and wrapped its fingers under the foot of my bed, and I could only watch in horror as its eyes and smile poked out under the bed. I screamed as loud as I possibly could as it did this, and a few seconds later, my mom came bolting into the room. As she opened the door, the creature vanished. I cannot explain what I saw that day, nor can I ask anybody to believe it, but I wanted to put it out there somewhere, and I figured this would be a good place to do so. Have a good night, everyone. I, 29 female, am in the final stages of purchasing an old farmhouse. It's a humble 100-year-old house on 157 acres in rural northern Canada. It's a 3-hour move from my current place, which I had to unfortunately leave due to a physically abusive relationship. This area stood out to me as it's relatively close to where my grandparents lived and farmed. It's perfect, and everything I want in a home. Yesterday, I had a tour of the property with the current owner who has lived there for the last 10 years. The house has 2 doors, and when I asked why he doesn't use the side door that has a large mudroom, he casually mentioned that his daughter, early 20s, is scared of the basement. Jokingly, I said, "What, is there ghosts?" To which he replied, "Yes, there actually is." My next question was, "Are they good or bad?" And he reassured me that they were good. He then told me he sees a man downstairs sometimes, and occasionally sees him outside walking towards the shop. There's a woman that spends her time in the kitchen when he sees her. He has never seen the children, but often hears them playing outside. I asked if there was any family tragedy that occurred on the property, and he said that the only story he knows of was the original owners who built and homesteaded there lost a child at a young age, and because it was winter, they had to store him in the cistern in the basement for the winter until the ground thawed. I didn't have any negative feelings in the house. I did feel a sense of comfort, but I've also had bad energies in a house previously, so I can't lie and say I'm not a little nervous. A good friend of mine is clairvoyant, and I brought it up to her. She's assured me that they are not harmful spirits, and they have attachments to their first home. She said she sensed that they liked me. She went on to say that the current owner advised me of them out of respect for them. There are no disclosure laws of haunted houses where I live, and as long as I live with respect to them, everything will be good. Is there anything I should be mindful of moving in? Anything I should do? Any kind of smudge or anything I should place in the home? I've heard not to put a mirror facing my bed, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else I can do. I don't want to push them away, but I don't want to open myself to anything negative either. This really is a first for me, purposely moving into a place with known entities living in it. I will also say I live alone for the majority. I have dogs and cats, and a new boyfriend who seems to be a little uneasy about this news. However, my mantra in the last few months has been, I am capable of anything. I got out of an abusive relationship that should have killed me, and here I am. I've been living my life with a newfound empowerment, so I feel confident that I can get through whatever life throws at me.